Okay, welcome back everyone, and welcome to discuss item agenda number 8, which is the Welsh Government Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Rate Relief Scheme for 21-22. Councillor Stenner.
Thank you, Leader. The report before us today gives details of the new Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Rate Relief Scheme offered by Welsh Government for the 2021-22 year only. Relief granted by the authority under this new scheme is to be reimbursed by Welsh Government by way of a specific cash limited grant. Before any relief is awarded, the authority must consider and adopt the new scheme. As we are all aware, the past 12 months has been extremely difficult for our businesses throughout the borough. In adopting this scheme, we will be further helping our businesses during the 2021-22 financial year. The recommendations are shown at 3.1.1 to 3.1.4 of the report, and I move.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Over to Councillor Cook, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm really happy to second this report because it goes some way to help local businesses such as shops, pubs, restaurants and gyms that have really struggled during the pandemic, with a discount of 100% of non-domestic rates bill for their properties between April 2021 and March 2022.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor Cook. Are there any questions around this? Okay. Steve Harris, did you want to make any comment?
Nothing specifically, Leader, other than to say, on the assumption this is approved today, the rate demands will be issued next week and the full discount will be shown on the rate bills. Great,
okay, thank you ever so much. Councillor Stenner.
Sorry about that, Leader, I was having a few IT difficulties. Yeah, the only question I've got for Steve Harris is, our team has been inundated issuing business grants throughout the course of the pandemic. This grant that we are going to be adopting now, the scheme that we are adopting today, or hopefully to adopt today to help our businesses, have we got the capacity in the team so that they're not put under further pressure?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Stenner. Yes, you're right, the team are under pressure, but the good news is with this payment is it's part of our normal billing process. And in fact, the reason we brought it forward as an urgent item today was to enable us to automate applying this relief. If we hadn't been able to do that, then there would have been considerable admin work to do. So if this is endorsed today, it will be an automatic process.
Thank you ever so much, Steve, for that, because I think that's a really important point, that, you know, the process is as slim as it can be to ensure that this money is applied. And I'm happy that it's come forward, because I think this is a much better approach so that it can be applied automatically, as you say. And I think that just takes away any stress and, you know, for those people that received a bill and then would have eventually received the relief. So I think that's really wise move to bring this forward, for us to approach it in this way. So I'm really grateful that you've done that. So thank you. Okay, if there are no further comments, then we'll go to the vote for this one. Sorry, I'm having difficulty seeing that. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and that's been unanimously passed, so thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda then is agenda item 9, the Strategic Equality Plan with the Annual Monitoring and Improvement Report for 2019-2020, and I'll hand over to Councillor Stenner.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to inform Cabinet of the progress made during the financial year during the year 2019-2020 against targets in the Council's current Strategic Equality Plan 2016 to 2020, and for Cabinet to approve for publication on the Council's website. I would like to place on record my thanks to all officers involved in gathering the data to produce this report, As you can see, there is a huge amount of valuable information contained within this report. The Council has a statutory duty to produce an annual monitoring report on equality issues under current legislation. The requirements are very detailed as to what relevant information must be included in the annual monitoring and improvement report. These are listed in the attached appendix to the report. The report demonstrates that this authority remains committed to achieving equality within all aspects of our service delivery and our employment practices, which is even more important during these challenging times and in such difficult financial climate. The recommendation is shown at 3.1 of the report for Cabinet to approve the annual monitoring and improvement report for publication on the Council's website by the 31st of March deadline. I move.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor Stenner. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second the report on the recommendations at 3.1.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay. Were there any questions around that? Oh, Councillor Whiting.
Yes, thank you, Leader. No, it's a good report, and there's a lot in there that we can be very proud of in terms of what we've done in terms of ensuring the best possible qualities within the organisation and outside as well. But obviously we live in this COVID world now and at the moment, and have done for the last year. And I can understand that while much of the report, the time covered in this report may have been pre-COVID, I wondered if anybody could lay out any impacts that COVID may have had on our ability to do these things, and what impacts may be coming through in the next report, and how we might be able to ensure that the next report is going to be as good as this one, with all the limitations that we're going to be facing over this year.
No, it's a really good point, Councillor Whiting. Anwen, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I can come in on that. Over the COVID period, there have been a number of reports that have been undertaken in relation to the impact of COVID on particular protected groups. And those reports are shared with relevant officers to consider the impact in relation to any service provision. Clearly, a lot of services were put on hold while we dealt with the COVID pandemic. And the way that we are now reopening those services, we are taking into consideration the removal of any barriers, new ways of providing those services. Obviously, during COVID, we very much pushed everything via the digital world, which has moved us forward leaps and bounds, but also it's left a lot of people behind, the people who are digitally excluded. So there's a lot of work to be done around that. I know the council has a digital strategy in place, which will help to push and guide us through that, and ensure that we are able to deliver services to every single resident and visitor in the county borough.
Diolch, Anwen. Councillor Stenner.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Looking at page 62 of the report, at table 1, the bullying in schools table, I note there that in the spring term 18-19, the figures compared to spring term 19-20, there's been a significant drop in those figures. Have we any idea why there's been that significant drop?
Sorry, could you say again?
It's on the discriminatory bullying in schools table.
I've got that.
And spring term 18-19 to the spring term 19-20. Yeah. There's been a considerable drop in the amount of complaints.
This information is gathered from education colleagues. I don't have to hand what the reason is for that. It could be, 2018, 2019, we were still dealing very much with the Brexit vote and the community tensions that followed that. It could be the spring term. Obviously, we were going, almost into COVID, and then at the end of the spring term. So it could be that data wasn't collected because schools weren't open. I'm not entirely sure. I can clarify with education colleagues and get back to you on that point.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you very much. I was wondering whether it may have been the Brexit effect petering out, should we say then? Yeah, thank you very much, Anwen.
You know, it's a really good point to raise that, Councillor Stenner, because I do, and also what Anwen just commented on, I do believe that would have correlated with us closing schools down. If you remember, schools closed down then, didn't they? So yes, but I think that you're right. It could be due to the other reason as well that you indicated. So if we can find that out, you know, and it'd be useful for us as a cabinet to know that as well going forward. So thank you. Okay, there are no other comments or hands raised there. So if you're content, we'll go to the vote to approve the annual monitoring and improvement report. Oh, Anwen.
Apologies. It's just to make you aware and for clarity that in 5.4 of the report, it says that against targets in the Council's current strategic equality plan, and what it should say is targets in the Council's strategic equality plan 2016-2020. You'll be aware that a new strategic equality plan was adopted by Council in October. So it's just to change the wording.
Fantastic, and thank you for that amendment. Thank you, Anwen. Okay, just waiting for those votes to go through. Okay, great. Okay, that's been approved unanimously. Thank you everyone for that. Okay, moving on to agenda item 10, the review of the corporate complaints policy and unacceptable behaviour policy. If I can hand over to Councillor Gordon, please.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to ask Cabinet to consider the views of the Audit Committee on the Model Concerns and Complaints Policy at Appendix 1. The Statement of Principles at Appendix 2 on unreasonable behaviour, persistent or unreasonable actions by complainants, policy at Appendix 3, and to ask Cabinet to endorse these documents. In addition, the Ombudsman Guide sets out a requirement for Cabinet to receive reports on the number and type of complaints, their outcomes, and any remedial actions taken as a consequence. It is a matter for Cabinet to determine how frequently it should receive such reports. However, it should be at least twice a year. The report proposes that Cabinet receive reports twice yearly, including an annual report. Members will note that the existing complaints policy was adopted in February 2013, and except for minor changes, it had been in place since that date. In 2019, the Ombudsman gained new powers under the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales Act 2019, which include complaints handling procedures. A complaint standards authority was also created within the Ombudsman Service, which has been developing complaint standards across the bodies within the Ombudsman jurisdiction. On the 30th of September last year, the Ombudsman wrote to all local authorities to confirm that Statement of Principles, the model complaints handling process and guidance were in full effect, and asked all public bodies to review their complaints processes to ensure compliance with the guidance, and I will ensure that all complaints are captured appropriately. All councils have been asked to provide a copy of its updated complaints handling procedure by the 31st of March. In terms of the model concerns and complaints policy, Cabinet will note that from report that there is no change to the two-stage approach, which will remain within the right to escalate the complaint to the Ombudsman. Whilst the actions taken remain in the same in terms of dealing and responding to contacts, there will be a greater emphasis on the way contacts are recorded. To support this change, customer services are carrying out scoping exercises and a service provider to streamline process both internally and customer facing. There is an existing officer complaints group which will review and implement the changes. The current practices are set out in the guidance to complement the model concerns and complaints policy. The Statement of Principles set out at Appendix 2 form the basis of the new complaints policy, and it is intended to promote these principles on the Council's website along with the complaints policy. In terms of the existing policy relating to unacceptable actions by complainants, this policy is rarely used but provides officers with support on managing situations where someone's actions are unacceptable. It is therefore recommended that the policy endorsed and published along the complaints policy and statement of principles. I move the report. Lisa Lane will provide Cabinet with views of the Audit Committee. I apologise, Leader, but I've got a very awesome sore throat this morning.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Councillor Gordon, and you managed to get through that, so thank you. Okay, if I can have Councillor George, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm only too happy to second the report.
Okay, thank you ever so much. Lisa Lane, did you want to come in? Is Lisa with us, or is it Rob?
Yeah, I think Lisa's lost connection, Leader. So I'll try my best to pick up any questions that members may have about the report. But before I do, Lisa kindly sent me a note that the audit committee, the governance and audit committee looked at. So perhaps I'll read the cabinet that, if that's of help. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Mr. Tranter.
Thank you. Okay. So I've got it on my screen here. So these are questions and queries that the audit committee members raised. So a question was raised as to whether members would benefit from the Ombudsman complaints training. And Lisa says, I explained that the training undertaken to date focuses more around the handling of complaints, recognising complaints and investigating. The training is geared towards officers, and the Ombudsman would not expect members to be involved in investigating complaints. So clearly, it's officers deal with investigating complaints. Page 5 of the policy, someone pointed out that it should be governance and audit committee, so we'll amend the policy. One of the things that we have to do as a result of the Local Government and Elections Act is to rename the audit committee, the governance and audit committee. So another question then was clarification was sought on how reports are presented to Cabinet and how complaints are considered. Concerns were raised about whether complaints from constituents on matters such as street lighting are accurately reflected in the reports to Cabinet. Concerns are raised on the mechanisms in place for flagging complaints to decision makers and how change may be affected on policies which have gone through a decision-making process. So Lisa says, I advise that this process has not yet commenced, and we currently report complaints data under the existing policy to the audit committee. The audit committee were also advised that in relation to the new performance management framework, how improved recording will be put in place to capture trend data. The committee's attention was also drawn to the work being undertaken with customer services on the scoping exercise to improve the way we collect data, report, and the way we learn lessons from this data. The committee was advised that even if there were large numbers of complaints made about a decision, that would not necessarily mean that the decision was not properly made. The next point, arising from this question, a member requested details on the number of complaints received since park night lighting was introduced. This information has been provided by Mark S. Williams and will be passed to members of the Audit Committee. A member commented on complaints regarding policy decisions and felt that the draft policy does provide a mechanism for making sure the complaints are brought to Cabinet and reported to the Audit Committee and is a matter for members to take forward. it was not so much where a person did not like the policy, but rather any unintended consequences of the policy. For example, a disproportionate effect on one aspect of a community. And so a policymaker may want to tweak a policy. The consequences should be reviewed. And I think those are the points that I need to
Oops.
Leader, Lisa is now on the call. Perhaps she would like to come in.
Yeah, and just as Rob, Mr. Tranter's internet was beginning to go as well. So yeah, Lisa, I can see you're back with us now if you want to come in.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, Leader. Yeah, I missed most of that. I caught the tail end. Just a couple of comments then. There were a few comments. I'm not sure if Rob raised these on the unreasonable complainants policy. There was a query as to whether the correct use of a word angle was properly used on page 132 of the agenda papers. It relates to where a complainant continues to correspond on a wider angle of issues. I was happy to change this word to range. And then on paragraph 8, members asked whether notification to local members on a confidential basis where a complainant's contact has been restricted should be strengthened to include advice to local members on their contact with restricted complainants. On this particular point, I advised the committee the policy relating to restricting contact with officers, related to officers, and that in relation to ward members, contact advice could be given on a case-by-case basis by either myself or the monitoring officer. And then finally then on the review date on the unreasonable complainants policy, members noted obviously that the dates there would need to be updated if members were minded to endorse these policies today. I hope everything's covered. If there's any questions, obviously I'm happy to answer them. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for that, running through those comments from the committee meeting. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I've got a question on acknowledging complaints. Obviously, because of COVID now, it's going to pose some difficulties in responding to complainants. But how do we acknowledge complaints? So we telephone, email, letter, and are we having problems with responding within the time frame?
Oh no. Okay, I think we've lost Lisa again. Okay, Christine, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, if I may, Leader. In terms of how we respond to complaints, each complaint receives an acknowledgement, and that is responded in whatever media form that we receive the complaint in. So if it's via letter, the response goes via letter. If it's on email, it goes via email. And then the response is given within the corporate timelines, which generally is 10 working days. Clearly throughout the COVID pandemic, our focus has been on delivering our response to the COVID pandemic. And throughout the last 12 months, we haven't been able to give that 100% commitment in terms of timescales that we would normally do. And what we have endeavoured to do, though, is if we were unable to meet that corporate deadline, we've kept the customer informed throughout in order just to, manage the expectations. But that has been an exception to the rule, to be honest with you. Our performance data is still very, very good. If I may, Leader, I'd just like to pick up on paragraph 5.9, which Councillor Gordon referred to in his introduction to the report, around the piece of work, the work stream that is currently underway on automating and improving the whole system of complaints across the organisation. As you can well imagine, it's a massive sort of work stream that we have. The amount of complaints and the amount of interaction that we have with the community, given that we deliver at least 800 services every day, is significant. There is a great opportunity for us to refine our existing system and improve our existing system. And you will recall that recently you've had presented to you dashboards, performance dashboards that we have at departmental level and also at a corporate level. And once that piece of work is undertaken and completed, the data that we're able to gather from these complaints and from any feedback that we get from the public, we can actually improve that even further to actually refine our services. Because that information that we receive from the public is gold dust to us, essentially, that we can actually use that to continuously refine the services that we provide. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much for that. Ed Stredmans, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just a little bit more to add to what the Chief Exec has just shared with you, in particular around the IT solution that we're going to bring into being around the complaints process. As well as doing all the things that Christina said out, what it'll also provide us is additional capacity, because the system will do a lot of the searching for the information that's stored. I think it's fair to say at the moment that quite a number of the people involved in the complaints process spend a huge amount of time searching and gathering together the information. So what we'd like to see is the system do that on their behalf, do the legwork, and that will provide our complaints officers then with an opportunity to make sure that the responses that are going back to the public are conditioned and are very, very engaging and helpful, and adds a little bit of kind of Caerphilly's culture and the Caerphilly care concept into all communication going out to the respondents. So it's going to be a big piece of work, but it's going to absolutely transform our approach to complaints and move the organisation forward significantly. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that overview there. I think that's really, really helpful. And again, that sets that ambition, doesn't it, to improve all those sort of front-facing services that we do, and, have a complaints procedure that is watertight and serves the communities that we serve. So that's fantastic to hear. So thank you for that. If there are no further questions, I'll go to the vote there in relation to both those recommendations that were laid out in the report, moved by Councillor Gordon. Thank you, everyone. Okay, that's been approved unanimously, so thank you everyone for that. Okay, obviously we amended the agenda, and we'll be now going to agenda item number 12 on the agenda, the Penmark Wind Farm Memorandum of Understanding. Can I bring in Councillor Ridgewell, please? Are you on mute, John? You're on mute.
As always, Leader, it's an error I make all the time. Apologies. Bear with me because my technology is not very good at the moment. Struggling rather this morning. Yeah. Thank you, Leader. As we're all aware, this would normally fall under Councillor Morgan's portfolio, but in his absence, I'm more than happy to take it on. So this report concerns the proposed Penmarsh Wind Farm and requests Cabinet approval for the Council to enter into a non-legally binding Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, with the private green energy company RWE for a proposed wind farm development at land above Rumley. Initial discussions have been held between the Council and RWE as to the possibility of a shared ownership. RWE are keen to proceed with this development and require the Council to sign up to the MOU to give them the comfort to allocate resources to modelling the shared ownership option for consideration. If a model is developed which is attractive to both parties, the Council would look to take a stake in the development. In simple terms, it is likely that this will consist of a percentage of the build costs. The Council would then receive the same percentage return on the revenue generated by the project. So the recommendations are that Cabinet, 1, approve the signing of a non-legally binding Memorandum of Understanding. 2, approve that officers work with RWE and the Welsh Government Energy Service to amend the MOU so it reflects the Council's aspiration for the scheme. 3, to approve that officers work with the RWE to explore shared ownership models. And 4, to approve that shared model ownership models options be presented to the Cabinet at a future date. Before I move this report, what particularly pleases me is that this is part of our ambitious plans to grow the authority under the fresh focus contained with our social heart and commercial head approach. So I'm more than happy to move this report. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor Ridgewell. Can I bring in Councillor White in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. No, I'm more than happy to second this report. You know, it is an in principle decision on the memorandum of understanding, and it's an early stage in the process. But I think this is, you know, a potentially very good project in terms of our decarbonisation strategy. We need to be doing everything we can in terms of environmental protection and thinking of the future. This is a really long-term future protecting a proposal, and will potentially help us with our, you know, social, as Councillor Ridgewell said, you know, our social heart and commercial head agenda, which we are so passionate about, I think, which is great. So yeah, I'm more than happy to second this report.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor Whiting, for that. Absolutely, this strikes at the heart, doesn't it, of that agenda, you know, in terms of decarbonisation and actually setting out our commercial strategy as well. But absolutely keeping that mind focused on us, you know, in terms of the social heart, commercial head. It is so imperative that we combine these sort of policies and projects going forward. So this is very exciting to be bringing this today. You know, for the beginning of something that could be very good for the county borough as a whole. So yes, I think this is, you know, the start of something that could be really exciting for us. So as I said, I'm grateful for the fact that this is coming today. So can we, if there's no other comments there or questions for officers, can we go to the vote? Fantastic. That's been unanimously supported, and very excited by the prospect of pushing this forward. So thank you one and all for supporting that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is agenda item 13, which is all around car parking charges. And can I bring in Councillor Ridgewell again, please?
Yes, thank you, Lee. Let me double check. Forgive me, I've just got a glitch at the moment. Bear with me. Yeah, yes, thank you, Leader. This report concerns car parking across the county borough, and the purpose of the report is to update Cabinet on the latest position with regard to the economic impact on town centres caused by the coronavirus pandemic, and to recommend a further period of free car parking to support the local economy. As we are all aware, many businesses within the county borough have faced significant challenges as a result of COVID-19 and the lockdown and/or trading restrictions that have resulted, and particularly businesses in our hard-pressed town centres. You'll recall that in June 2020, a long time ago now, the Chief Executive, in consultation with the Leader, Cabinet members and the acting Section 151 officer, took a delegated powers decision to temporarily suspend car parking until the 31st of December 2020. Conscious then of the continuing critical situation faced by our town centres, on the 9th of December 2020, Cabinet took a further decision to extend the suspension of car parking charges until the 31st of March. Since then, Cabinet has monitored the situation very closely, and in light of the continued economic challenges and continued imposition of trading restrictions, now seeks approval to further extend the temporary suspension of car parking charges until the 31st of September 2021. Leader, I move.
Thank you so much, Councillor Ridgewell. Councillor George.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just to add to what Councillor Ridgewell said, this is basically a further extension on the decision originally taken by this Labour administration in June 2020 to suspend car parking charges to help reinvigorate our struggling town centres in a post-COVID world. So I'm happy to second the report.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor George. It's been the report has been moved and seconded, and thank you very much for moving that and for making those very key points there in terms of the decision-making process over the period of time through the global pandemic. So thank you. Can I invite Councillor Etheridge, because I know you wanted to make a statement or raise something.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I spoke previously, as you're aware, on the car parking charges, the situation, not just in Blackwood, but in various town centres. And I'd like to thank the Cabinet for the deferment the charges, which has helped. But today I want to specifically speak about the extension to September. I would like to make 2 points, Leader, if I could. I would like to suggest to the Cabinet to consider the deferment until April 2022. The reason I say that is because obviously we will be going into the Christmas period, and the September period, you know, is quite busy for the traders, and then we'll have the January-February period. That's the first point. The second point is, and perhaps John could come back on this, or ask Mark Williams. I understand that Ken Skates, the minister, yesterday announced £24 million to revitalise town centres in regard a loan. And I'd just like to compare you, because they recognise, the Welsh Government, how hard hit businesses have been in the town centres. Reading the report, it mentioned the comparison year. It didn't mention Caerphilly. It said that they're going to give 2.57 million to Blaen y Gwent to benefit strategic sites in Ebervale and Bryn Mawr. So I'd like to ask, how much are they giving to Caerphilly, and what areas are being targeted? This is all to do, Leader, with the Welsh town centre loan schemes to revitalise town centres in Wales. But I would like to ask Cabinet, I appreciate you're going to defer until September, but obviously with the Christmas period coming up, and, you know, January, I would like you to please consider till April. And with this town centre redevelopment loan, I would also like you to consider abolishing car parking charges altogether. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Thank you for that. If I'll take your questions in 2 parts, because I think it's important on the back of the announcement from Ken Skates, the Minister. So I'm wondering if I can bring Mark S. Williams in first to address the second part of your question, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Obviously, we've just considered a report on a loan for Caerphilly Town Centre. A loan scheme generally relates to one-off capital expenditure. Obviously, the long-term or permanent abolition of car parking charges have ongoing revenue implications, which typically would not fund from a one-off loan. So, there is a difference. I don't know the details of what's been allocated at Blaen y Gwent, Councillor Etheridge, because obviously the decision was only yesterday. But, we are benefiting from a number of Welsh Government funding streams, and are supporting a number of town centre businesses, in terms of improving the facade of buildings, altering buildings, very much one-off capital expenditure, as I said. And this has been largely led by the Valleys Task Force. So this is a continuation of that type of arrangement. But my understanding is certainly not the intention of a loan scheme to fund the abolition of car parking charges. It is to do physical work in town centres to regenerate those town centres.
Was that the ice cream van arriving?
Apologies, it's my doorbell.
I thought it was the ice cream van. Okay. Thank you ever so much, Mark. And as you say, this has only just been announced, so we need to work through and see what the detail of that loan is. Absolutely, we need to do that. I'm just conscious that, we had already set out to review the car parking charges in September anyway, based on the extension, and also, what a post-COVID world is going to start to look like, what recovery is going to look like. So we are absolutely already, had that in our mind already, Councillor Etheridge, in terms of reviewing in September, because I think we have to take an approach that is sensible in the way that we review all of these charges, as you know, because it's set out in the recommendations, that we'll be setting aside money from earmarked reserves to cover the income shortfall. I think I must also stress as well around this is that, car parking charges must be considered as part of our overall COVID recovery, and our plans for our town centres and communities as a whole. So, just to emphasise that. But, it's important, isn't it, that we align everything to the COVID recovery, and absolutely we will look at a review. I've got many hands up here now. I think I'll go to Councillor Stenner.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm really happy that as a Cabinet we have decided to extend the free parking at our car parks. I'm a regular user of the car parks in Blackwood, and I know how well this has been received not only by the people who shop in the town, but also by business owners. I've spoken with business owners in Blackwood, and they have stated how grateful they are for the support. As we follow the roadmap out of the pandemic and hopefully see non-essential shops reopening, this will give businesses the much needed support that they desperately need. And it shows that as a Cabinet, we are committed to supporting our businesses. Councillor Etheridge raised the point of extending the free parking until April. This is something that as a Cabinet, we have spoken about at length on many occasions. And I would like to reassure Councillor Etheridge that this is something that we will be reviewing on a regular basis going forward.
Thanks ever so much, Councillor Stenner. If I can bring in Councillor Gordon, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just like to thank Councillor Etheridge for his continued support of a Labour-led Cabinet.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Gordon. If I can bring in Councillor Cook, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I say I'm again very happy with this. Keep suspending the car park charges because it goes some way again to help businesses in our area. And not only that, in Caerphilly, with hopefully the tourists coming back into the town with the castle, it'll help tourists be able to not have to pay to go and see the attraction. So it's a win-win situation over the coming months. Thanks, Leader.
Okay, Councillor Ridgewell.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I think actually I touched on this in my opening remarks, really. I made the point that the Cabinet has been monitoring the situation closely right the way through. I mean, this is something that is really dear to our hearts. And, in light of the economic challenges, we need to continue doing this. There will always be scope to review this. And I think one of the options we might be considering is refreshing the car parking task and finish group that we initiated back in, 2017, I think it was. And update it in light of what's going to be hopefully a post-pandemic environment. So I think there is scope to look at this. I think we need to take one step at a time, but I'm optimistic that we can proceed and achieve the results we all want.
Can I say, yeah, thank you ever so much for that, Councillor Ridgewell. That's a really good point. And I think what I try to encapsulate there really in my remarks back to Councillor Etheridge in relation to this is that, we cannot, and I need to reiterate this, we cannot take car parking charges in isolation. What we need to look is what we're doing in that post-pandemic, post-COVID world around town centre reinvigoration, all of those things that are really, really important. When you look at our place shaping plans that we've launched and we've gone into, we do touch on town centres and how important they are in all our communities. So I think it's absolutely right and proper that we look at all of this in light of that post-COVID world in terms of our place shaping plans, our town centre renewal, and what we want from our town centres going forward. So I absolutely think, the sentiment is fantastic, but we absolutely cannot see this in isolation. So the fact that we have already acknowledged that we're going to review this in September, and that has always been part of our forward work programme in that sense. I think, the fact that we have the extension to September, it's sound and it's proper and it's the right decision to make today. So if everyone's content with that. I think we'll go to the vote. There's no other hands indicating to come in. Thank you, members. Okay, thank you, everyone. That's been unanimously endorsed. And Councillor Stenner.
Yeah, I'm having some difficulties with the voting, but I'd like to record my vote for.
Councillor Cook, you've had a similar issue.
Yeah, I want to vote for as well, Leader. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. If they can be recorded, Rob and or Charlotte.
Yes, we'll record those verbal votes, Leader, as for the recommendations. Certainly will. Thank you.
Okay, and that has been approved unanimously, so thank you. Okay, thank you one and all, and thank you, Councillor Etheridge, Councillor Mann, for your attendance today. As always, grateful for your interactions, and thank you one and all for your contributions today. And I will, if you can stop recording now, Charlotte.